City Council due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 and public health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants may not be practical or prudent. Aldermen and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall due to the disaster, and physical attendance at City Hall may be limited. To participate remotely during the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting, please join by phone at 1-562-232-9385 and use PIN number 567-128-757, the pound sign.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Alderman Robinson.
Present.
Alderman Hurt.
Here.
Alderwoman Gilbert.
Present.
Alderwoman Swanson.
Here.
Alderman Parker. Absent. Alderman Poulos.
Here.
Alderman Geenan.
Present.
Mayor Tomes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I get to sit next to you. All right, public comment. I don't, is there a sign-up sheet?
There are two sheets, one in the
sheets.
back and one up front.
Ted, I assume you probably signed, I don't know.
I did. I
Okay.
think I'm first,
Are you first? I don't.
but I'll let you formally call me.
Trust you.
I don't want to presume
Sorry for
anything.
missing your call. I was
Thank
at
you,
the
sir.
Honda dealership when you called. I have no idea there's somebody behind this.
Yes.
Yeah. in
Ted
the van-
Pappas,
In that van.
Friendship
In
Manor.
that van. I've been
We can
complaining
try to
about
keep
him for
the
months.
conversation about 5 minutes. I think we're going to have a fairly lengthy meeting here, so we try to keep it brief if we could, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, members of City Council and city staff. 2 weeks ago, I addressed this council to lay the foundation for the manor to receive funds locally allocated from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. I'd like to quickly touch upon 5 key facts that I covered last time and provide you with some additional information that I believe supports our request for funding. Friendship Manor is the 15th largest property taxpayer in Rock Island County, paying $485,000 a year in property taxes. We're the 3rd largest property taxpayer in the city of Rock Island, and we have over 250 employees. Our payroll, wages, and taxes and benefits are near $11 million. And in 2020, we provided nearly $1 million in charitable care to our residents. Friendship Manor has maintained full employment to date since the pandemic, no layoffs. This was an intentional decision we made for the good of our residents, our team, and our community. We meet many of the 5 categories enumerated in the coronavirus state and local recovery summary. Category number 1, supporting the public health response to mitigate spread. To date, we have spent $486,000 for testing alone. Our industry continues to function under one rigid, costly regulation. We still remain one positive test away from being all the way back in outbreak, which sets off a whole new series of restrictions, testing, PPE, and census growth impediments. Category 3, addressing negative economic impacts by supporting small business. We kept our staff employed throughout this entire pandemic, despite 20% census reduction. That is just now starting to rebound. I've provided a graph showing the census of just over 88% in February of 2020. We are currently at 74%, and based on current growth, it won't be until August 2023 until we fully recover. In your packet, you will see this graph showing the long climb we have ahead of us. Category 4, replacing lost revenue. Revenue in the first quarter of 2021 is down over $1 million from 2020. You'll see in your packet I included an article that talks about the deaths that occurred due to COVID. In 2020 over 2019, 550,000 more people died in the U.S. than they did in 2019. Friendship Manor was not exempt from that. We had 20% more deaths at Friendship Manor, and we're still recovering from that. Category 5, which I think is a real important thing, premium pay for essential workers. In 2020, we provided $275,000 in hero pay, which then went on to make permanent. We looked at our staff and said, you're heroes, and we're not going to take that away from you. In 2021, we've paid an additional $20,000 in hero pay. But I ask, where are the funds? Our industry is being ignored. Our industry is being ignored. Let me say that again. $30 billion projected losses in our industry by June 30th, 2021. No CARES Act funding has been released since second quarter of 2020. There's $23 billion appropriated in April of 2021 that still sits in Washington. In Illinois, our industry last week, our industry lobby groups that represent not-for-profit facilities like the Manor requested $450 million in the state budget. We got $121 million, and 45 of that was carried over from last year. Who's listening? We need your help. We're alone in this fight, we feel. The residents who rely upon us to be there for years to come need your help. Our staff need your help. Tonight, we are asking for your help. Please just tell me what we need to do to make this happen. And then one final thought, and I'll conclude. I've presented a packet tonight of some great projects Friendship Manor has planned in the future. But if we don't stabilize, those projects won't happen. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and I will answer any questions if you have them. If not, I will sit down and let the next person speak.
Thank you very much.
I do have a question, if that's okay. Ted, can I clarify, there was something you brought up a couple weeks ago regarding the amount of money that was spent on COVID testing. I think you referenced $300,000 in 2020 and $160,000 in 2021.
Yes.
Were those paid out by Friendship Manor, or were those federally funded? Were those being paid by federal funds?
Well, those were paid by some funds that we received for the first half of 2020. We have not received any funds for the second half of 2020. So there's testing now that we have received no funding for.
Okay, but some of it was paid for.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It was just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that's a fair statement.
it wasn't
But going
spelled out.
forward,
Okay.
we've not received any CARES Act funding
Okay.
for the second half of 2020 and the second half of 2021, because we're almost through 2021. Thank you.
All right, thanks for
Councilman
clarifying.
Hurt.
Thank you.
Mr. Papp, so what you're saying is that, keeping staff through COVID, keeping fully staffed, you kind of, what I've been hearing in my professional job at the Day Foundation, a lot of nonprofits have been pulling upon all resources just to kind of get through COVID, putting off projects, delaying projects.
Yes.
Because staff are important, keep staff on going, and then relief comes, and then there's a delay, right?
Yeah.
And so your staff is probably, maxed out.
Well, it's amazing. What we're starting to see is a mental health crisis. We're starting to see a mental health crisis, not only with our staff, but our residents. Keep in mind, they have been locked down for many, 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 many months to protect them. And our staff has been constantly dealing with COVID, and we're starting to see a lot of our staff actually they're starting to have exhibiting signs of PTSD. It's a very real thing.
Well, and I'm sure they could watch us here, hearing that you told us 2 weeks ago, employees will have to be laid off if the government doesn't come through.
If we don't get aid soon, you have to, ultimately, Friendship Manor has to stay viable, and we have to be able to pay our bills, and keeping fully staffed with our revenue that's been clobbered by the virus is unattainable. There's eventually going to have to be a reckoning. We don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen.
That in-between time we're in right now.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
questions.
Yep. Okay, next up, Kathy Jordan.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members as well as staff. My name is Kathy Jordan, and I am the Executive Director for De La Cerda House here in Rock Island. We are the largest exclusive housing provider for people that experience homelessness and live with HIV. And we are proud to be a part of the Rock Island community. And while I could sit here and tell you for quite a long time the amazing, life-changing work that we do, I'd like to pose another idea for you tonight. I am aligning myself with many of other nonprofits here in the Illinois Quad Cities as well as the overall region and asking for your assistance to collaborate with us. When you discuss about the ARPA dollars and where you feel that the best resource where that needs to be, I'm asking you to coordinate and collaborate with us to support the people of this community, not just people that De La Cerda serves, but many nonprofits in this community do amazing, life-changing work every single day. And regardless if there's a pandemic or an economic crisis, people do not stop with what they need. And we are much like Friendship Manor, where we kept going. Maybe had to switch up the way we did services, or maybe had to rethink the way that we could take care of people. But ultimately, people come first. And I know that there is a lot of heart and a lot of desire on this city council to do what's right for this community. So as you deliberate tonight, please collaborate with us, be our partners at the table, and help us continue to do amazing things in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thurgood Brooks.
Good evening. How are you all doing today?
Good.
Mr. Mayor and the council, city manager. I just want to speak a little bit about the COVID relief funds, a little briefly. My hair is in my face, excuse me. So the COVID relief funds, the city of Rock Island, are about to receive, I believe, our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to transform our city and get it right. And if we don't get it right this time, there won't be a next time. I want to be very clear about that. And so it's a unique opportunity for us to bring life to the vision of Rock Island as a thriving, diverse, family-friendly, affordable city that fosters and supports local talent and attracts new talent from elsewhere. We must invest these funds wisely, fairly, and with a commitment to these following goals, in my opinion. 1, ascertain equity and distribution. 2, serve each area of the city according to its needs. 3, obtain extensive input from residents. 4, pursue long-term sustainability to see future revenue generation. And 5, provide transparency before, while, and after funds are allocated or spent, So 1, when you ascertain the equity and distribution, that means we avoid the temptation of a trickle-down economic. If we do that, we will ensure that the benefits are for everyone, and that we uplift our city and position ourselves well for the future. And so how we can do that, example, I think about 40% should be spent on initiatives that will affect all of Rock Island. Dispersing these based off of specific initiatives, including investing in green energy to make our community sustainable for the future, providing additional funds to our police department so officers can be given the training and good work conditions that are essential to community policing. Such initiatives will improve the standard of living and drive the economic development of all residents here in Rock Island. Maybe 40% should go to and be invested in all areas of Rock Island to ensure a basic standard of living, such as a grocery store within a mile of where all residents live. The transportation and how in which they can get there should be re-looked at and assessed that is done in an affordable and attractive way. Lastly, 20% maybe should be allocated to each ward regardless of their needs. That will allow residents to provide input and determine what's best for their ward and what they need. I will be sending an email to everyone to further along. I want to respect everyone's time. I don't want to get into detail, but I want to be clear. This is a once-in-a-life opportunity for us here at Rock Island. It's not a lot of money, and I do think we should be careful and intentional and inclusive, far beyond how in which we've done things in the past, whether it's your doings or not. It's 2021. We've seen what a pandemic can do. We've seen how, and research shows, if we invest and we are intentional behind equity, not equality, I'll be clear, behind equity, communities, cities, regions thrive. That's how we do it. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is it Angelo? Angelo, yep, Julian.
Hi, my name is Angelo Julia. I'm a third ward resident. Thank you for the council. Thank you, Mayor, for having this time and having this venue for us to talk this morning. As much as we would like to tell ourselves that 27 million or so is going to solve all of the problems, it's not. We have way more problems than we have money. And so what is the strategic way are we going to spend the money to have the most impact? I have several suggestions for you, and I'm sure you're going to continue to get several more suggestions on how you should spend the money. So you can be a lot right, but most times you're going to be probably a lot wrong. If we could take 20% to reduce some of our debt would be great. 20% to do something different in Rock Island would be great. Take the other 60%, hold on, and over the course of time that you have to spend it, see what projects make more sense. If we spend all now, we won't have it for later. It is not going to solve every problem in Rock Island, and everybody is not going to get a piece of the pie. I'm just pretty much honest and like to shoot straight forth to it. But what can we do with what we have? And the second part of this is just, recently we had an incident with something was said and there were protesters, and I sent emails out to almost all the city managers and all council members. I just wish we would come up with a consensus of how we address emails coming to council members. Some were very engaging, but I think any citizen that sends an email to any councilman should get something at least that says, thank you for your email, or thank you for your concern. Because when I don't hear anything, you're telling me that I'm not nothing. And so I'm pretty sure that's not what you're saying, but sometimes what you say and what I hear are not the same thing. So I'm just asking you, if you get an email from a concerned citizen, just say, thank you for the email. I'm not telling you what to say, but maybe I am telling you what to say. Thank you for the email, and thank you for your concern would be great, but not to get anything back means that I don't count. And I know that is not what you're saying. I know that you're busy. I'm not, you're going to tell me, I've got X amount of emails, and I don't know if I can answer them all. I'm not telling you have to answer them the day of, but sometime during in a 5-day period or whatever period you want to say, that citizen should get something from you that acknowledges that they took the most valuable thing they have in life, which is their time, to write you something. And I think they deserve an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Just clarification, it cannot be used to pay down debt. The money cannot be used to pay down debt.
And that was one of the drawbacks of a forum like this, because you know what it can be used for and we don't.
I think there's a plans of having a more open forum. Excuse me. I think there's plans. I think everybody's in consensus that we need public input in several different forms, like a town hall meeting, emails, survey, et cetera. So we do plan on getting public input.
I hope so, because I would hate to see the massacre if you guys make a decision without asking.
No, we plan on talking to
Okay.
people. Or listening to. All right. Let's see, Derek.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you tonight. When I came to speak before you a couple of weeks ago, I shared how the pandemic has affected a nonprofit Rock Island agency like Marriage and Family Counseling Service, and how even a percentage of the federal funds that are being made available to the city of Rock Island could be life-changing for a nonprofit like ours. enabling us to expand our staff and serve more Rock Island families. I also expressed hope that more nonprofits would have a seat at the decision-making table regarding these allocations. Since that meeting, I've only heard from Councilman Geenan, so I'm returning tonight to make my investment clear. I am here to help in any way that I can, whether it's providing information about a nonprofit agency such as mine, whether it's sitting down for a face-to-face meeting with council representatives, or whether it's volunteering to serve on a committee that can serve as a resource or advisor to this decision-making body on the allocation process. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves. I'm willing to participate in this all-important process of allocating federal funds in hopes that we as a community can invest them in such a way that they have the greatest impact for the most Rock Island families possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? That's all I have on the list for public comment. I don't know if there's anybody out there virtually. Is there anybody virtually?
There's not.
There's not?
Just me.
Okay, just you. All right. All right, then we're at item number 7.
American Rescue Plan discussion.
And I want to just start real quick. We use acronyms, and I can't remember who I talked to about that and everything else. But I just, for the public and everything else, and Josh just mentioned it, but we're going to be talking and maybe using acronym of ARP or ARPA. And for those people that are listening out there for this, but it stands for American Rescue Plan Act, what the federal government put together, $1 billion for cities and states and counties to I would say give out, but to use for different projects in their community. So I just want a clarification, so if we use these acronyms or whatever, people understand.
The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
2021.
And it's 1.8 trillion.
Billion, excuse me. But, so I just wanted a clarification. Sometimes we get to the point of using acronyms and people don't understand, so.
But our pie is only 26.5
So,
million.
I think the city manager is passing out some documentation here.
Can I make a recommendation while Randy's
Certainly
passing
can.
that out? Can we agree on a hard stop time for tonight? Because we know we're not going to get all this accomplished tonight. I just want to have that thought in process. We come up with a hard stop time so we can be productive tonight. Because the longer we sit here, we're just going to keep stretching things out. What?
Oh, no,
Oh.
no, I just
thought it
had
was-
I had a question, a follow-up to
Okay.
that question. So, that sounds reasonable, but I guess so, my question then to council members are, what are the outcomes we're looking for after tonight's discussion? So that we have some objective we're trying to accomplish in tonight's discussion.
Right.
Because we're not gonna be able to get everything done.
Exactly, exactly.
My understanding, one thing we were hoping to get done is to develop the process that we're going to go through, not who's going to get it or exactly how, what allocation amounts are going to go to each in different categories.
Right.
It's more the process to get there. That's my understanding, to answer Alderman Gilbert's, Alderwoman Gilbert's, excuse me, I apologize.
But process can have a lot of
Yeah.
different pieces and take more than one meeting, I guess we'll see,
Yeah.
but.
Well, I'll start the discussion with asking the question, what is, as Alderman, or Alderwoman Judith said, what is our outcomes that we're trying to achieve with the overall process? We can think of tons of ideas to do with 26 million, but what is our outcomes? So what are we looking to achieve with these funds, with the community, with, the state that we're in right now? What are we looking to achieve from this?
I would think a massive full recovery in 3 years where people have money in their bank accounts, they're fixing up their houses, and we have money in our general fund to fix roads.
And,
Did you say roads?
yeah.
I mean, we have, isn't this how this is supposed to be wrapped up? Like, this is the big thing from that got us out of the Depression. We haven't seen this significant influx of money since, the war on poverty. Is our outcome to use this as a plan to deploy it for 3 years so we can get a creative way, knowing what's unique to our community, what the specific needs are for us. We just heard we have to hear from the community. I don't know what the needs are.
I think one of the things we also have to remember is these are rescue funds. These are restricted funds. So it's not Aunt Mary's inheritance that is a windfall that has thrown into your lap. They have funds with restrictions on it. And so they have to be used in accordance with those restrictions. Otherwise, we can be asked to return those funds. And I think, to me, that's the big thing, is understanding that these funds come with rules and parameters on what you can and cannot use them for. And they're like, to me, they're disaster relief and recovery funds. They're disaster funds to help the city stabilize the city to pretty much come back whole to where we were at 2019 before all this started. And then once you get there, once you stabilize your foundation, because without a strong foundation, you aren't going to go anywhere, then you start to look at, okay, we're stabilized, we're back whole to where we were. Now, how can we use these funds to better the city? Where were the shortcomings that became very apparent during the pandemic that we need to work on to fix? Because we all know there's going to probably be another situation that's going to happen in the next couple of years, and you don't want to run into that and realize, oh my gosh, the same problems we ran into in 2020, we still have them because we neglected to address those concerns. I mean, to me, broadband was one. I mean, how many kids really struggled with connectivity trying to do their schoolwork because they didn't have access to anything? So I think we have to be really strategic in looking at being whole, fixing those shortcomings, and then look at how do we use these funds to go ahead and improve the city, perhaps set aside some funds for a grant that nonprofits can apply to within the parameters of that restriction, telling us exactly how they're going to use those funds, and then circle back around a year later with a report on this is how we use those funds, because what we don't want to do is give funds to other agencies and then find out they weren't being used in the right way, and now we're being asked for those funds back, and you go back to a nonprofit who probably doesn't have those funds. So I think the key thing we have to keep in mind is these are rescue funds, and they're restricted. And to me, 30 years in the nonprofit world, restricted funds are very, very different than unrestricted funds. So that's one thing that I just think we all need to kind of keep to the forefront.
All right, so I passed out two documents. One is something that Alderwoman Gilbert came up with.
Can I real quick, I hate to do this because I don't want to ignore Alderman Moses. You asked about a stop time, a quit time.
Oh.
We've not done that in the past. I don't want to leave it open. So does anyone want to consider that, or do we want to just wait and see how it goes? But
We had it on, I think the evite from Randy was that we stopped at 9 tonight, so we could honor that.
Oh, I agree.
9 or whenever we feel like we're done.
I'm just saying, if we wanted to start somewhere with a conversation, that was what was on my calendar. What do you guys think?
I'm okay going till midnight, but
I can go later. I just,
we got a pillow back there.
what would you prefer, Randy?
I think the way it was sent out was 9 o'clock. We stop at 9. If we get done sooner, we get done sooner.
Is there consensus?
Okay.
Fine with me?
There we go. I'm sorry, I didn't want to
Nope,
leave that
that's
hanging out there.
That's what I was looking for, because I know,
I know.
anything for too long, just like kids, you get impatient and you just start agreeing to things you really don't feel passionate about. So just making sure we're all energized and we can handle that. So
We
if
will
it's,
shoot for 9 o'clock. If we feel like we're close to something, we may stretch that, but we'll go for it.
sounds good.
Oh, no. So two documents, one that Alderwoman Gilbert sent me earlier today, and that is her vision of a process, what a process could look like. And the second is a document that I handed out. It's an outline, basically, and this was put together after my individual meetings with you, just trying to narrow some of the topics we talked about into these areas where it seems that we need to come together. We're really kind of all over the place on these when I met individually, and if we can come together on these and give staff a place to focus on, we can start moving forward. So if you want, we can use this, and I'll just go through and start at the first item. Does that work?
I might.
And the conversation can go any way you want, because it's really your meeting. Okay, so the first one is what we just talked about, is what does that recovery look like? Do we just want to bring us back to the status quo where we were in 2019? Or are we looking to recover, step one, and step two, transform? Transform or transformation are words that I heard from a number of aldermen. And what does that look like? And nobody quite knows. So I guess if, Alderman Parker, if you'd like to discuss what you sent out to everybody, so that is a way to get here, really, I guess a couple of ways to get here. One would be to have a consultant come in, and Alderman Parker can throw out his ideas. The other would be to start off with strategic planning, as Alderwoman Gilbert had suggested, and through that strategic planning, you know, we set up this process here and how we're going to work through that. And a number of you have said to me the importance of starting out with a clear direction, taking our time to get the information before we move forward and just start deciding how to dole out this money. And then 4 years from now, we look back and we go, we didn't dole it out correctly because we didn't have an end state in sight and we didn't have any measurables along the way to make sure we were getting there. So I don't know, Alderman Parker, do you just want to kind of talk about your idea? You floated it to everybody.
Sure. You know, really, the idea is just we need to come up with a recovery plan, right? Now, one way to do that is to hire a consultant to do that. I'm pretty much, in my frame of mind, I've been comparing this to a natural disaster, right? Hurricane comes in, wipes out your community. What are you going to do? The federal government comes in, FEMA, dumps a bunch of money onto your community, and you got to figure out what are we going to do with this money, right? It's kind of the exact same thing as what's going on here. Just doing some Googling, because I don't know anything about disaster recovery, nor HUD, nor FEMA, nor any of this. I just got on Google, and yeah, of course, there's a cottage industry of people who know how to create these recovery plans and know how to think about the things that we're talking about, right? Like, how do we figure out the unmet needs as a result of the coronavirus pandemic? Having a public meeting where people who don't work at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday can come and are prepared and confident enough to plead their case doesn't seem like the most inclusive way to do something. We are currently engaged in a consultant that is doing a needs assessment on the west side, or at least trying to. COVID has postponed that, but you know, we currently have hired a consultant to do this very thing, only on the west side, but perhaps we approach that consultant and say, hey, we need to shift this a little bit and figure out what are the unmet needs of the whole community as a result of this. It's one option. But the point of the recovery plan is we gotta come up with a recovery plan, a document that says, here's the goals, here's the process, here's, you know, what we're gonna do over the next 3 years of having this money. The reality, in my opinion, is that, like me, many staff and council are not experts in figuring out how to recover from a disaster. So how do we do this, right? When we don't know how to build a water treatment plant, we hire a consultant to show us how to build a water treatment plant. I know the Kelly from Disaster Ready Quad Cities was here the last meeting, and over these meetings I reached out to her and we've started a little dialogue of, well, maybe we don't need to hire a consultant, but maybe there's some experts here in the community that know something about disaster recovery and we can just cue them in. I don't know, I'm spitballing here, but here's what I've been thinking, right? Some of these questions of do we stabilize or transform will be answered in the process of coming up with, you know, as we go through this process. Because we can't really talk about how we're going to transform things until we have identified what needs exist. I mean, housing is probably a big need, with respect to COVID. We all know what COVID did to housing in our community. And so once we've identified, yeah, housing is an issue, and here's the constituency that's been affected by it, and blah, 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 then we can start thinking creatively and say, okay, we could just dole out more rent assistance to help people pay their rent or to pay off their back rent or something, or we can try to think creatively to use this money to transform sort of the status quo of people renting in the first place, right? So I'll just leave it at that. those are my general thoughts. I welcome everyone else's.
And I think I might want to take a step back, and then I think I'm going to listen a lot. But, you know, meetings are where the meaningful work happens, and we're going to have to, it's going to take a while to figure out the process. But I'm going back to March 26 when Linda came and did a study session. Part of the prep process as we develop a process is we have 11.5 sitting in a checking account, and we're probably not going to spend it all 11.5 in 2 years. We're going to deploy the money in 3 years. One of her advices was to set up an investment policy for the ARP funds. We have a local CDFI, a community development financing institution called Bridge Investments. Perhaps we could put some money in there as a money market like our regular investments. Maybe Friendship Manor could get a loan from them for $500,000 and pay it back. And we'll get our money back because just like we'll take our money back in a couple of years, there's some creative things we can do to help meet the needs of our nonprofits as we have these meaningful meetings where we're not just planning for growth and we're not planning for change, but we're growing and we're changing right here, right now as we're coming up with these ideas and where the needs are. So I think there's, you know, yes, we need to do that plan, but we also can be responsive into, you know, do we have a recommendation of an investment policy of the ARP funds? That came up in March, I believe.
Yep, and we did change our investment policy, if you remember, so we could handle this money that came in. And as I mentioned to you, Linda's out of town, but she is going to research that and see if there's creative ways to use this.
Right, so that's
Invested
not
in the community.
spending the money, it's
Right,
saying
it's
it's
just
part of it because it is
investing it.
restricted. But we do have from the government, from what I've heard and when I've talked to Mike, to Sherry Bustos' staff, is for the first time in history, the most local discretionary ability to spend the money. So there are restrictions, but a lot of freedom within that. So we have to take our time and spend it.
Yeah, and that freedom comes, you know, when we replace our lost revenue. That has to be spent, so it isn't money that we just take it and keep it. It's money that we have to spend then, and it can be on any of these things and other things that aren't included in
Yeah.
the specific criteria. So that's where you do, as you're right, there's a lot of flexibility there.
There's some tools to do beyond the ARP funds, just with our normal investments, beyond the grant type of a thing. That's all I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Two observations I have. Dylan suggested coming up with a recovery plan. Unfortunately, the city has a history, we don't use the plans we write, so that's just an observation. The other thing is, I keep hearing from the nonprofits that we've heard here, I hear from businesses in my ward and residents, that we need to figure out how to hear from them how COVID has impacted them, to get a sense of the needs that are out there, the needs for the nonprofits, the needs for small businesses, the needs of average
Manufacturing.
mom and pop with kids. You know, how has it impacted them? What do they need?
The needs of the renters.
That is a huge piece of it, I think.
I think that's what Dylan's talking about with, Alderman Parker's talking about with the consultant. So, case in point, what we're doing on the west end with the survey, the needs assessment, if that's expanded citywide or something similar to that, you're able to get to the door. You hire the consultant to handle that big chunk of data that needs to be collected. We don't have the means to do that, unfortunately. We don't have the means to communicate effectively. So this could be an excellent way to start that process by doing a needs assessment for the entire city. And instead of just doing it for the west side at this moment, just expand it. This is like we've been talking about. I think we should start there, and that's gonna collect the data that we need in order to make a viable decision. Because if not, we're just possibly.
I'm sorry.
I agree with all that, and we can't forget the other part of that needs assessment is the city's need is also in there, and we can't forget about that. And I'll say the obvious, water and sewer, but there could be others, and streets and those things. I know it directly can't be for streets, but you can put it back in the lost revenue and use that, and so we got to make sure that, and that's another thing to decide is what portion's going to go to what. And we got to make sure that we assess those needs, because I think that's very important. Because there's some projects out there that I won't say we could never be able to afford to do, but obviously it would take a long time, and it could be on the backs of all the citizens if you have to increase water fees, sewer fees, property taxes, or whatever to be able to do these. And so those are things that actually do affect every citizen in the city of Rock Island if we don't address those
infrastructure needs.
Right.
Also, so we don't have to increase property taxes or water fee, water, sewer, et cetera. So that's a very important part, because some of these other things we're talking about don't affect everybody. They affect a number of people, the nonprofits, very good organizations, but it doesn't affect everybody. So we got to keep in mind, what can we do that affects everyone?
That's where I think that assessment will come from. I mean, you'll be able to get the data to make that honest decision. Because right now, that's exactly what we're doing. We're just hoping that we make the right decision without any data to guide us. So we need to get the data so we can make a very conscious decision, because this is a very important decision and we get one shot at it.
Right, and it's
So
not.
3 years later, are we going to just waste 26 million, or are we going to actually show some progress from it?
If I may, though,
Go ahead.
if I may, one of the things that we have to keep in mind, and it was alluded to by Alderman Parker, that, we need to operate like FEMA operates. And having gone through that and presented the paperwork to FEMA on a previous experience that I had in another city, if you come in there with a plan, which I think we are all wanting to get that plan done, the money is there. This pandemic is not like a normal disaster.
Right.
We don't have identifiable damages, roofs that are torn off,
Buildings.
things that we can see, that we can reach out to FEMA or in this case, ARPA, to say, this is what was damaged. Everybody's perception of what was damaged more, how can we make this money, how can we look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and say, we had the opportunity to fix that, and we didn't. We had the opportunity to make a difference, and we didn't. So I'm all for the survey. I would like, but I think we need to keep in mind that we have infrastructure here that Rock Island has not taken action on, that could put us in a situation of being liable, of mitigation. If we have an opportunity to avoid that, we're not only protecting the city, but we're protecting the citizens of that city who will ultimately have to pay for any such issue.
What infrastructure with liability are you referring to? Could you be specific for the audience?
We have sewer problems, sewage problems, without citing specific cases. If there is a problem with a sewage line that we know about and we don't take advantage, or we don't try to fix, we could come back and be held liable for not fixing it. If we have the opportunity to correct a problem and don't do it, then we can be held liable. And again, I would refer that to our attorney, not discussing any specific case, but generalities. I think all of us here are versed enough to know that there are issues with our water and sewer lines throughout various parts of the city that I think we need to look at, so that we don't come back later and say, you had the opportunity and you didn't do it.
So I just want to clarify, I think when we're talking about a needs assessment, that's not just, look, an amenity. I want a new park in my yard, or I want, something that's going to brighten my neighborhood. Our citizens know what's going on with our city. So if it's infrastructure, if it's sewer, if it's, communication, that's still data that we need to collect in order to allow us to make this decision. I agree with you. We have some infrastructure issues that are well beyond the amount of money we have in order to fix. But we still can take part of that and handle those situations also. But we have to collect data to figure out how we prioritize what do we need to do.
I don't disagree with you at all.
We were out for a walk yesterday, and we were having an interesting conversation with a family across the street, kind of laughing, like, starting July, because we both have 2 kids, we're going to have $500 a month coming into our checking account because of this extra child care that got passed in this whole American Rescue Plan money. And then she was saying that she doesn't have to pay her student loans right now because there's a 0% deferred in terms of paying your loans. And we got into a larger conversation. I work in philanthropy, so I know a little bit about kind of money, playing, all that good stuff. And I got to thinking, if we provided a lot of residents in my ward with financial literacy, a David Ransby class, that would be a good investment because we're going to have a lot of, 25% of our cash has been printed in 2020. That's in circulation in America now. Maybe that's a long-term type of a thing of a small investment with a partner. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. It's our residents that any of these entities are serving. What are the needs? Sometimes it's not bad needs. It's a good need that someone who's making $14,000 a month or a year is going to get $500 extra a month in their account. That this is bringing our child poverty rate up by 50%. That's tied into Rock Island's recovery as well.
Right.
And so we have an obligation to make sure our residents also have that self-sufficiency and that prosperity. And so that's what we're collecting data, but then stories.
So are we in agreement that we need to collect data? So can we put that down as one bullet point that we agreed upon? We need to collect data and either hire a consultant so we can get that process, locked down, and then from there we can kind of address what else we need from that process.
Yeah.
So that process will take a while, because, they go door to door. So it isn't something we're gonna have in 6 weeks, if we wanna do it that way, just throwing that out there.
Has anyone else been?
And do they even have the capacity to
Yeah, it may have to be
expand?
somebody else. We would talk to them, and
There's
maybe they don't.
There's another way of seeing, collecting data that I've done is obviously through the phone, and not just landline phones, cell phones. I mean, there's organizations that do out there politically, do polls and everything else. And because the reality of getting every single household could be very difficult. But if you got statistically a majority of them, or whatever the statistics, I'm not a statistic major, that if you got 2,000 households, and I'm just throwing a number out there, that you use that data and expand it out. Could be another way to do it that would help expedite things a little quicker and still get input. And it may be, and be quicker, could be also by using the phone. You don't have, I have just the amount of time it takes to go door to door, so to speak. And you can do a lot of data collection that way of what types of, what areas of are you're contacting to make sure that it's equal throughout the whole city and in the wards, that sort of thing. You can do gather a lot of information based on income and that sort of thing when you're making these calls, so you get a broad base of
I know for me,
individuals.
in my ward, I've never seen any more interest in my years on council of my residents calling me and
Right.
asking about this. So what would be helpful for me is to find a way or having some support about how to do exactly respond to emails, throw ward meetings, that kind of support of how do you do a survey monkey, how can the alder people be out there talking with residents. This is the time to get, block clubs going, get neighbors talking to folks.
But to have this
Spark
consultant,
it.
if you're hiring somebody,
Yeah.
I don't mean to not cut you off, but hiring somebody to collect that data, and I think we should have town hall meetings, I think we should do the survey monkey and everything else. But instead of us gathering that data, whoever we hire should be gathering that data. So it's the report in summary it gets back to us is consistent.
Well, not
Because you hate to have their report, and then we over here have our pile of data, and it's not asked in a consistent manner to be able to meld together very well.
It depends on what we're asking for here, right? Because we have to be mindful in what we are procuring, if in fact we're talking about procuring something. I am not personally interested in hiring a consultant to literally go door to door in every house in the city of Rock Island, right? No. What we are needing, which is what we are trying to procure, is just we need to understand how this has impacted the community. And some communities, you can Facebook message them. Some you can call them. Some you can meet them at Hy-Vee. Some you have to go to their door, because that's the only way that you can get a hold of them. But the reality is, I'm not an expert in soliciting information from the public, at least at this scale. And so, if we are talking about procuring something, we just tell the experts who know something about procuring, hey, we want to figure out how COVID has impacted our community and what are the unmet needs out there. Tell us what you think the best way to go about doing this would be. And maybe they come back and they say, well, you actually have we've reviewed your staffing, and actually, if you do this, then you actually have 3 people that could be dedicated to doing this on staff, and you can do it internally. Great. Or we can use volunteer groups like the CCC and block clubs and get those going. I mean, Moses and Thurgood, you are part of the needs assessment team going door to door. I mean, we hired a consultant to do that, but it's not like they're going out there and doing it by themselves. They put together the plan of who can talk to who to get this information, right?
Recruited
So,
volunteers.
I mean,
We had a very
just because we're talking about hiring a consultant, it doesn't mean that I'm going to write a check to some
Right.
stranger from Chicago that's going to knock on every single door. No, they're just coming up with the plan as to how we can utilize the assets that we have to figure out this information. And talking, sorry to keep going, but talking about transformation. This is an opportunity for those of us who keep on saying, hey, we aren't doing strategic planning well because we're not getting input from the public as to what we should be doing. Maybe this is an opportunity through asking an expert to show us how do we better field public information to then use that same process in 2 years or whenever we need to do a strategic planning process to just do the same thing over and over. And now we haven't just bought a one-time slice of data, but now we've increased our capacity to be able to do this every 4 years or whenever we want to do strategic planning. I mean, it's that type of transformational thinking that we should be doing with every dollar of this.
And when I'm
ARP.
reminded what Kathy offered in terms of having a place at the table, you were on the complete count committee for the census. We had a really good time for the first time through our efforts of the complete count committee. Government efforts were working best when trusted messengers from faith-based communities, from our nonprofits, from our businesses, were helping carrying the message of what it means to be counted in the community, are helping carrying the message out about what we're doing with our American Rescue Plan funding, that type of stuff. I think we have assets here. We did it through the census and got the word out. You're right. I think,
I mean, we're just asking an expert how's the best way to do this.
yes, yeah.
Dave, didn't you find an article that, and part of it was, I think, a fact sheet from Baker Tilly? I'm not familiar with that firm, but I think they're a very large firm, and they seem to have some expertise, and already they're like, we can be a resource for you in
yeah.
figuring out how to spend your ARPA funds.
It was just the link that was in Linda Barnes' presentation to us on the 24th, I believe.
I remember it had an excellent checklist.
It did.
But it also had, use Baker Tilly as your resource. We can help you figure it out. I'm pretty sure. So that was from Linda Barnes originally.
I think
Was
so.
a link?
I think so.
Yes.
I don't-
So what would you want me to do at this point? Reach out to Enterprise and then reach out to some other organizations like Baker Tilly and some other organizations to try to get some information from them? I'm trying to get some direction. So we know we need to collect data. That's what everyone agrees on.
Collecting data is one of the aspects of a recovery plan, right? Because we can't figure out the outcome to which we're trying to get without figuring out what's broken, right? Because when we figure out the car is broken, the outcome needs to be a fixed car, right? So it's a part of a recovery plan, but it's not the whole thing. It's not who decides what, when, right? It's not who's in charge of figuring out who to ask for the unmet needs, right? It's part of the whole plan. I mean, really, we need assistance in coming up with a recovery plan, and that's where I think going to the University of Illinois Extension Office is what the lady from Quad Cities Disaster,
Kelly Thompson.
yeah, Kelly Thompson, but what's the group? Quad Cities Disaster Recovery or something like that. I mean, I'm interested, me personally, and it's just one of 8 of us here.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued on where this conversation is going with the people in the Quad Cities local disaster recovery community. I mean, we have the Rock Island EMA. They're professionals in disaster management. Maybe we should just ask them and say, hey, we need to figure out a plan here on how to recover from this. What's your recommendation? Do we just put out an RFQ? If we do put out an RFQ, what would you recommend we include in an RFQ?
Right. Have we consulted the counties that have the same restrictions we do? The school district can use their money on broadband, so can we. I mean, there's a lot of coordination with the funds as well that could be deployed together.
Yep, and they'll all be included once we figure out, how we get there.
Sounds like we just need a staff person that's almost like a philanthropist or a grant maker for the council for the next 3 years.
I think we have to just recognize this is going to be, new territory for everybody. Even we have disaster programs and like Alderman Polis said, they're not used to dealing in this magnitude. They're used to something, and I'm not going to say simple, but it is something simple.
Right.
A block is wiped out by a tornado or a dam is broken. Those are easy things that you can identify and fix, but what we are facing right now, we're facing mental issues, we're facing, housing, financial. There's so many different, it's so wide as far as how do you recognize or how can you identify how it affected someone? Because it's going to be different with everyone you talk to. Certain people responded different to COVID, and they're still responding different to it. So it's hard to come down with a one thing that's unique all the way across the city. So going out and recruiting different organizations is going to be very, very difficult because, again, there's no precedence with this. This is new.
I think I'm going to pick up on what Dylan talked about is the recovery part and the disaster, in understanding that. But then the next stage is, of course, and which is on here, is transformation. And what do we, and I guess I'll put it, what do we want to be? Is simplistic. Do we, and I don't, we need to talk about that. And this I'll say the consultant or the data is not going to tell you exactly what you want to be. It tells you what the needs are,
Right.
but not what you need to be.
Like we
or
want
want to be.
vibrant tourism.
Yeah, that's why I started with what is our outcome? So
Right.
what are we looking for outcomes?
Exactly.
Because our outcomes are going to drive what we are trying to accomplish.
Right.
The same thing with our vision. Our vision is going to drive our goals, so they're one and the same.
Right.
Well, which is why I said, like, a key part of this is getting our strategic plan done first so that our ARP outcomes align with the goals that we establish in the strategic planning process.
Within the limitations.
I kind of disagree with that because I do not think it is fiscally sound to tie a strategic plan to restricted funds. I think your strategic plan needs to tie and work in partnership with your operating budget, which is all unrestricted funding. I mean, to take your strategic plan and hook it with restricted funds, to me, is a disaster waiting to happen. So in my prior job, I did do disaster recovery work as part of the foundation that I worked with. And one of the things that you do is you identify what are your immediate needs. I mean, that's what you do first. What are your immediate needs? What do you need to do to stabilize where you're at? We've heard from the nonprofits. They have an urgent need. So maybe one of the first things we do is set aside some funding for grants and have the nonprofits apply for grants to get their most important needs done. And then we look at stabilizing the city and getting because it's kind of like, if you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask drops, you put your mask on first before you put anybody else's on. And I think that's kind of how we have to look at it. We have to address the city's needs first, because without the city, we aren't any help to the residents.
But I
So
think
we
that's,
address the city needs, and I agree with the needs assessment, and I agree with, whether it's town hall meetings, whether it's ward meetings, we need to find out from the citizens what they need. But I think what we're going to find out is what a lot of the citizens need, like the mental health and all that stuff, that is supplied by our nonprofits, by our businesses. So how are we able, because we can't do it as a city, but we can enable those organizations who do that, and how do we look at that? So I guess I look at transforming, well, yeah, our goal is to be the best city that we can be for our residents, but to do that in a way where the city can't provide everything. We have to be in partnership with others. But, I just keep coming back to, you can't not focus on the fact that these funds have limitations. So let's use these funds for what they're intended to do whatever it needs to be done in the city, and then those funds from the city that no longer have to be used for broadband or for the sewer or for whatever then those funds become unrestricted funds that then can be used in ways that we can transform the city, because now there's no restrictions on them, because we've taken care of that and freed up money for us to use to grow.
The nonprofits that have been talking to me have said that, there's a bunch of money coming to them, and they know it's coming from the stimulus money or the relief money in terms of rental assistance or direct payments for students. The problem that they're saying is that no one's looking for jobs. They can't hire it. They don't have the capacity that's coming their way, the train that's coming for when the money's, they don't have the technology or streamlined process. So we're going to have a lot of folks of unexpired money that will be sent back to help with some of these ascents if we don't start shoring up some of those. And that's part of recovery as well. I think some of our philanthropic partners are trying to shore that up with their grant applications that are due. But, I was talking to the Whitewater Junction, there's a silver lining in having a minimum wage in Illinois, that our lifeguards are fully staffed. Davenport, I think, was having some of the pools within the paper, their lifeguards aren't staffed. People, they're having a hard time finding employment. So I don't know. I just have been hearing things from businesses and from nonprofits, and it's.
So I've been hearing from financial experts within our city after we had the discussion on the budget process. And it's all well and good that we need to stabilize the city, although we seemed to do okay at the end of last year's budget, where we said we weren't going to fill positions, but we are filling them, but we did not have a property tax increase. But if we don't improve how we spend money in the eyes of our residents with regard, and then, using ARP money to stabilize the city or to get our lost revenue back, I think we are going to see tremendous pushback from the residents. They are going to be watching very closely, and they'll just be like, well, it's the same old business as usual kind of stuff happening with the city. They're watching us really closely now.
As they should.
They
Well,
should.
And that's where a well-rounded recovery plan would include a communications portion of it, so that we think about how are you going to solicit communication to the city as to what people need or their thoughts, their input, and also output. How is the city going to communicate to residents, this is what our plan is, this is how we spent the money, this is, here's, we check the box, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we got to know what our outcomes are so that A, we can achieve the outcomes, but then also B, go to our constituents and say, we did B. We're not idiots, I mean, for whatever the need is. But that's part of the recovery plan, includes a communication plan.
The other part of it, I guess, is also using best practices and communication is with the surrounding cities also. I'll say surrounding, you can even go outside the surroundings, but what are they doing? What data did they gather? What are they seeing? I think that's other data that we can add to this. Also, because we don't want to, once again, in some cases we work at recreating the wheel when the wheel's already there. Mm-hmm. And so there could be other sources, conversation, just like what we're doing tonight, in other cities.
Well, we're in a unique opportunity where we're sparking the energy and the connection between people, between our constituents and to ourselves, between other regions, between other cities. We're making something that's greater than our individual. This is something we get to do as a community together.
No, I agree, and that's why we got to make sure the communication with the other cities and counties and, both Iowa and Illinois type of deal, they're all in the same boat in this case because it's federal money. Rules are the same. And so.
I think our only example that we have to go off of is either Davenport or Moline, Randy.
Davenport is the furthest along. Yeah,
And
they're
they've
pretty
done
close.
surveys.
And Moline.
But that's the thing. I mean, I would challenge that a little bit. I don't particularly want to do what Davenport has done.
No, I'm not saying that.
Where Davenport just, here's a website, fill out your idea, again, that limits it to only, I want Rock Island personally, me personally, one of 8 people, I want Rock Island to lead the Quad Cities in, our recovery plan is focused on the needs of renters, is focused on the needs of the unemployed. because renters and the unemployed are a lot more likely to not be able to fill out an online survey that the city puts out than those who, like myself, admittedly, were not particularly impacted by the pandemic.
And I wasn't saying I would follow exactly, I'm just saying,
Sure.
but you never know what little bits and pieces you catch from them and say, oh, you talked to, Deloitte about it, and what did you find out? Or you did this survey, do you share the survey results, what you got there? You may find some commonality, you may find things that we didn't think about. That's all I'm saying, is that little bits and pieces, you never know what you pick up.
And I just take the
From
approach,
others.
I don't know any of this. I know, like, I've told David Roquette this, there's a lot more smarter people in the 7th Ward than me that have, we have a lot of nice houses in the 7th Ward, CEOs, CPAs, people who know one thing about transformative work. I want to consult them to help me make a good informed decision of what we're doing. It's asset-based community development. All of the problems in our community can be solved by the folks in the community. We are, the sense of there is no, when we're working together.
It's just having somebody to harness that information. Once again, you
Be
can get you can take a
helpful.
lot of notes and get a lot of people talking,
Yeah.
but you gotta have enough expertise to harness that and summarize that. That becomes a bit of a challenge at times, to
Thank
be
you.
able to do that.
Thank you, that's what I need.
Yeah.
That make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree getting all the input, but you gotta be able to summarize it.
Great.
And you're not gonna make everybody happy and take care of all those needs. But that's the key, whether it's an outside individual that does that, whether there's expertise that we can find it someplace else. But that's, to me, now that I think about it,
This
it's probably one of the more critical situations that you find even when you're doing strategic planning, that person that's facilitating it, to be able to summarize things from what they heard is very, very key.
Pass up that moment where we have a pulse in this community that wants to be engaged and how we're going to recover
Right.
together.
No, I totally agree with that. That's, after I got thinking about it here, it's like,
We have to
That's
figure
the
out a way,
trick.
we have to figure out a way to meaningfully engage them.
Yes.
but, and I think the meaningful is gonna be a multiple of truth. Various,
It's not gonna be the same for everybody. We all know
No.
that, yeah.
No,
So we can
and-
do the unplug, we can do surveys, we
That's
can do
exactly-
door-to-door, we can do town halls. I mean, it's gonna be a multitude of different things, because it's gonna be, I mean, this is how we're put together. I mean, we're that diverse.
Mm-hmm.
You have the refugees. How are they gonna be included in this? They're not gonna do, we can't do the surveys, and so we have to think.
Yeah.
We have to think logically how we're gonna put all this together. We have the language barrier with so
I was on the quarterly call last week, 450 families coming next year. 150 will be placed in Iowa, 350 or 300 will be placed here, 350 in the Illinois side. County Health Department has a refugee screener nurse who's retiring. I think they have a surgeon general now that will sign off on the health screenings. Yeah, we have a lot coming next year. Last year, I think we had 23 families from refugees coming to the community. Next year, we have 400.
this is gonna really get down to into the weeds here, this comment or thought.
Yeah.
Is we talk about unplugged, town hall meeting. How soon, because I'm just trying to work on dates, because getting dates together that works with everybody, how soon would people like to see that?
see,
Do it
Whenever-
unplugged.
Whenever allowed by the state's rules.
What, Dylan? I didn't hear you.
We can do it now.
Whenever we are allowed to have that type of gathering in accordance to the rules.
Friday.
June 11th.
Friday.
11.
It opens up just like,
Plus, right now, you could have, I think, 1,000 people indoors or half.
Oh, well,
of
we
the-
better wait. We're going to have more than 1,000.
I don't know if you'll have 1,000 at one event.
no.
But I think we need to have a couple of events,
Yeah,
because
Yes.
it's like, if you have it on a Tuesday, like tonight,
Right.
Right.
tonight could be a bad night for people who work on Tuesday or people who work nights. So I think we need to have a couple of them. I think we need to spread the locations out to make sure that people with transportation issues can get to them. And then different times, I know a lot of us work, and so, you'll be able to have some during the day, some in the evening, but
No, and that's why I guess I'm trying to get it out there is that we can do a Google Meets type deal, not a survey type deal to work on dates.
Randy,
We want to make sure
can
that,
we use some of this money to hire staff people to work with council?
We can use it to hire staff, yes.
to work,
But can council create an own office
Well,
by ordinance?
I don't think, once again, I don't think it's the
I'm
council.
just,
that-
I'm not saying we have to, I'm just
I
wondering.
think you can
course.
use, the staff can be whatever they want. It could be a consultant, it could be an in-house staff, it could be a contract person, it could report to whoever, I think.
I mean, it could be a temporary deployed position for.
But I think
Yeah.
that whatever position we hire or do, or that sort of thing,
to my opinion, should report to the city manager, not the council. It's not our job to micromanage. It's our job to set that direction
Right.
and
But it's-
prioritize,
yeah.
and the city manager is the one that does the devil's of the detail, and then whoever consultant, volunteers or whatever, work with city staff versus the council.
I just want to be aware.
Like a
The council
monthly
would,
report.
yeah, and the council would still be involved in
Yeah.
that, no matter where the
Yeah.
I just
person
know of
sat.
the extra, we
because-
had talked about, like, if we just did 5 projects or something with the money, that wouldn't be, the extra amount of work on staff if we go different ways, you know.
Yeah, and I
they're
think we're
already-
going different ways, I think, and that's later on in here. We'll-
Yeah,
we'll
we
get to
could go
that.
different ways. couldn't it?
Okay, so, real quick, just because we leave these meetings tonight, and we can't wait for 2 weeks to talk about it again, or the 14th to continue, is that we want to have several, at this point, one of the things I think is consensus to have a town hall meeting and unplugged, at least one. Am I jumping ahead?
You are, yeah.
Okay, I
Please,
apologize.
Please.
I apologize.
I would like to first, let's get a resolution on the first item. Do we want to hire somebody? It could be, I've got a number of names from people. The University of Illinois Extension, I know that you're meeting with.
It's with regard to strategic plan.
Right, but can that, are they able to do a recovery plan also? Because they were the name recommended by Kelly,
Yeah.
who Kelly is,
Right.
working with it. So can U of I do that? Can some other organizations do that? And I can reach out to Baker Tilly, and I can find out who can do that. Is there consensus that we want to do that first, whether it's a consultant or we just have someone in and help us with the planning? And would they be able to guide us toward a goal, not just our normal strategic planning, but, maybe there's 2 parts to the strategic planning. One is ARP and one is our 3-year plan. And some of them will coexist, obviously, but some of them will be outside the ARP if we're going to do.
We gotta continue working
So
this.
I think we need to gather more information. When I have my meeting Thursday with extension people about strategic planning, I can ask about the recovery plan since they do a big piece of that anyways. And you could contact Baker Tilly and whoever else.
Okay.
But I don't think we're prepared at this night and point in time to say, oh, yes, we're going to hire a consultant. I'm getting texts already, don't hire a consultant from residents.
So just to clarify, you are 100% correct that we've done a number of plans where we hired a consultant that goes on the shelf. However, I came from Public Works, and we hired a consultant to do a specific project. The long-term control plan, design this sewer for us, design this water plant, design this sewer plant. And when you already know where you're going and you have the funds, then when you hire a consultant, you do what the consultant says. Whereas if you say, I want to plan for the Broadway
Revitalize.
neighborhood and there's no money behind it, then it probably just goes and sits on the shelf somewhere. So it would be a kind of plan where we're using expertise to move the city forward. I just want to clarify that. A lot of people hear consultant and
Right.
it's more of a public works consultant where we've got a real goal that we're moving towards and we're gonna.
We have the resources to execute the plan, too. I mean, that's the whole thing. We went ahead and got a downtown revitalization plan, but had no resources in place to actually execute the downtown revitalization plan. Now we're trying to get a downtown place management organization to have some resources to execute the plan that we adopted 7 years ago. I mean, we put the cart before the horse in that situation, but I think what Randy is saying is correct.
Yeah.
We got $26.5 million behind this project. If we do not have an expert that knows how to plan this well, we are, in 5 years from now, going to turn around and say, ooh, wow, yeah, what did we do with all this money?
Sometimes you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for.
And
Not
so we
only-
may have to
not
pay
only
to
And
get
I
somebody.
think this council is committed to executing this plan. I mean, as other plans where you get them and they sit on a shelf, this plan's not gonna sit on a shelf. We're gonna put our plan together and we're gonna move forward on that plan.
Right. And I think we're right, we're in agreement. And the downtown plan that Dylan's talking about, we have 26 million, but we have a staff person that can untangle the rest of that 1.8 trillion that's coming in. There's humanity arts dollars that's coming in through, department, SBA loans are coming in. There's a lot of leveraging that we can do that makes our 26 million look a lot more.
All in agreement then that we should look at some of these options, some local people and some consultants that are not local, just to see if they're able to participate here? Is that the direction we're giving staff right now?
I just want to hear from Alderman Hurt
Yeah.
first before we move forward, because I know he has some.
So I feel like this conversation's been dominated by like 4 people here, so the rest of us are, like to say something here, so. Do we have any kind of a cost associated with getting a consultant? that
We don't.
Huh?
We have not,
Okay.
we have not reached out yet at all.
My-
Some of the local people would be very inexpensive. It wouldn't,
Okay, now are those
there's
costs?
going to be a fee.
Okay, are those costs able to be there's no place, we have to use it in the, how would that be funded? By the city or by the ARPA fund?
Through the ARP funding.
Okay, which section of that would that apply to, though?
You know, it may come under lost revenue, but I think,
That's the only thing I can think of.
I'll check with other communities and specifically how they're funding it, but there's a number
I
of
think
ways. to
that's
fund-
an
but it would-
appropriate
It
question
would
to
be
ask before we
funded,
start making a decision whether to hire somebody.
it would be
There's a
funded
cost
with,
that goes with it.
it would be funded with the ARP.
Well,
But we don't know yet. That's why I'm looking for direction to go out and try to gather some of that
I
information.
think it's silly for us to say, yes, go ahead and hire somebody, we don't even know what cost.
We're
to it,
not,
so.
I'm just looking for a direction. Are we going to gather information on someone to do, whether it's help us focus our vision, or whether strategic planning is involved in that?
I think by giving him that direction, what happens is then he comes up with the cost, what's included in that. Then it comes back to us and we make a decision if that's what we want to do or if that's not feasible. Does that fit within the ARP guidelines or is it outside the boundaries? So then we go back to the table and we start all over again. This is just a means to the end, just try to get something on paper so we can start somewhere. Because if not, we're like I started in the beginning, we'll be talking for 3 hours and not get anything accomplished.
So I guess, so my question then is, are we all in agreement that the best scenario, we don't know how to fund it, specifically how much it's going to cost yet, but the best scenario is someone to help us gather give us an initial goal and some direction to move forward where we all have input on that, all the elected officials. Is that what I'm hearing?
What's the timeline for getting that, if we move forward with that idea, what is the timeline we're talking here?
Certainly by the end of next week.
Okay.
Is that, everyone agree with that?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. All right.
But does everyone agree? Because do we
I
need to do a roll call?
I got nods
or-
from
Okay.
everybody, so I think I'm good.
We just don't
As
want
long as
anything to
get-
come back.
I
and-
need something, either a yes or a nod from everybody, so I know.
What would you like, a vote or not?
No, I'm fine with a nod. I just don't want to come back, get this information and then get emails from some people go, I don't know why we're gathering this information. I didn't want that. I want to know that now if someone's objecting to it.
So we're looking at options
Here we are.
to see if we can find expertise to help us develop a recovery plan.
Yes, and that may be in line with strategic planning.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on here is guiding principles. I don't even want to talk about that because that's going to be figured out later on. The next one that we've talked about a lot is hiring a staff. So a couple different options. One is to hire, so I did hear from most people that they like the idea of hiring someone to manage this. I think almost all of you, if not all of you, said that there should be someone. And it leaning toward an accountant / project manager, or maybe 2 positions, or maybe more positions. So other cities have done 3, an accountant, a project manager, and then someone on the ground. I think 2 would be sufficient if we wanted to go that way. Council wants to do 1, that's fine. It could be a consultant, or it could be a person that's hired temporarily. So I've mentioned to some of you, when I started here, I was hired in that role. I was a city employee, but it was there was a limit, it was going to go no longer than 3 years, so I knew that coming in. Yes.
If it's a 3-year type of a deal, rather than adding someone to the payroll, could we just contract with a local CPA firm? They can hire up for a 3-year contract, and then we're giving a local business.
We can,
It's a
yep.
3-year contract, and then we don't have to find another spot for you on staff when this is when we're
Yep,
done.
so we can contract with someone to provide somebody, and for other things, other cities have done that.
That way the finance department's not overloaded with 26 million to account for over the next 3 years.
For instance, the manager in Moline is a contract employee through GovHR, right? He's not a city employee.
Well, and I would just like to clarify, seeing as how this started with, Dylan has this idea to hire a consultant. I consider Dari, who has an economic development service agreement with the city, a consultant. They're a contractor, right? I mean, I think we need to be explicit in our language, right? I mean, yes, there is the classic fly-by-nighter that you hire to come up with a plan, and then I got my money, I'm out, right? But I would say that what we're looking for is much more a service agreement type of relationship, where an entity will provide services like managing a recovery plan or coming up with a recovery plan. And I think that this, continuing with the conversation about transformation, is a neat opportunity for us. We've all been having conversations about how the city needs to do a better job at managing projects wholesale, right? Is this an opportunity to invest in that aspect of what this city does, so that after the 3 years of managing projects with respect to the ARP money, now we understand how to manage projects, or we have the capacity, no insults to the current capacity, not saying that people right now don't know how to manage projects, but we've built out structurally more capacity for the city to better manage all projects across the city. It's a neat opportunity. So when we're thinking about hiring, keep that in mind, I guess I would say.
But will Dari be focused enough?
I don't think he's saying do it hard, Dari. He was just using it as an example.
That was just an
that they're
example. I'm not
they're technically
suggesting that
consult-
hire
That's
Dari.
an infrastructure investment we can make that's not necessarily a street. It's an infrastructure in our processes, I believe. is what-
Yes.
The reality is we can work with a consultant to get a plan. Once we have the plan, then we can look at potentially a project manager / accountant to go ahead and implement that plan
Correct.
and make it move forward.
Correct.
That's the step we've always missed as a city.
Yes.
We've never done what do we do after the next step?
But we would want to start that sooner than later, because there'd need to be a search.
Well, and I mean, I have here on my notes, my list of notes, I'm going to send you, Randy, and I can share it with everyone else if you'd like, but I'd like to give you some bullet points of like, what type of services is included in come up with a recovery plan, right? I mean, let's be kind of thoughtful on what do we need? And part of that, I think, is exactly what Alderwoman Swanson just said, is an aspect of helping us figure out how to manage this plan after it's been developed.
So I can gather some information then on that, if there are some local firms that would be willing to contract with us, if that's something that council wants, just to gather information. But I think everyone's in agreement we need a person to manage this, who can focus on nothing but this and who can research all the nuances and understand all of the different programs that are coming out, because as you mentioned, it's way more than just what the city's getting. And we don't want to allocate money somewhere and then the federal government comes in and puts some money there. We could have put our money somewhere else.
Or their philanthropy that gives grants out every year is putting money in something that they could put somewhere else if we were in conversation.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that holds us accountable to using the funds the way they're supposed to be used. I mean, to me, that's a big thing, because
Right. So
we
there
don't
might
want
be-
anyone coming back saying you did
that's why we
not
wanted to have an
appropriate these,
accountant.
and now you owe
Right.
them back.
Why don't we get an
That's why
expert?
they gave, I think that, Randy, did they give us 3 years or 4 years to report back that we actually did it, spent it correctly?
It's 26 and 27, I believe, are the years, yeah. So it has to be spent by 26, and I think by the end of 27, you've got it done all your reporting. But, if you spend it before that,
I think that as we go through this process, we need to, at the very least, have an annual audit as to where we are at this juncture.
Oh, I think you need to have it twice a year.
I'm good with that.
Honestly,
I'm just
to
saying
make
the
sure that
outside,
it's-
the
yeah.
outside parameters, at least once a year. I would be happy with once a quarter. I mean, the closer we keep an eye on it, not managing it, not interfering with it, but the closer we keep an eye on it and saying, hey, we don't get caught at the end of 4 years saying, by the way, you owe us $12 million. And we're going,
Well, I think just to keep it on track, and also because it's a living plan. It's not static. So, as you're moving forward, we may find at the first 6 months review that, oh, we need to go this direction, because while we thought this was something important we needed to do, all of a sudden other fundings come in or a need has popped up and we might need to pivot a little bit.
Well, we're doing the survey down on the west side and everything else. We won't have those results until the end of this year, or close to it.
Right.
We may be able to use some of the funds for that, but we won't know what those are until then.
Right, right. Well, that, I mean, I think that is gonna take so long because we have it was a small pool of people who are gonna actually be doing the surveys. So we can expand that to probably increase the timetable to get that information back. So collecting the data, it was.
John Deere Foundation's funding that, but yeah.
Right, right. It wasn't that many of us who were gonna be actually collecting the data, so.
Right.
But I'm just saying, yeah, whatever, I just want to make sure that that's inclusive. You don't want to just miss the deal. We get the plan all put together, and then that comes forth, and it's kind of like, oh, shit.
Right.
We spent that money.
Right.
We've all allocated it all, and we don't have anything to implement that.
Did the John Deere plan cover all of Rock Island?
No.
Just the west side.
So that could be a portion of the data that comes to as we develop the whole city taking access of the 26 million, how we deploy it equitably. You have data from the study that will help inform.
Right.
From that good, we have that now, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if that comes in after we've already started, because this is not gonna be, we're not gonna set it in stone this year. It'll be a living plan, as someone
right.
mentioned here, and
I could
it
use
will
some
evolve.
help with answering the questions about why are there more houses becoming rentals in some areas of the 7th Ward. There might be some solutions with this money or other grant money that could help turn that around as part of a recovery.
Right.
But we don't know yet because I just know that that's what the census data said is I have more rentals in my ward now, and that concerns some of my residents.
I mean, that's what we pretty much done. We did for like 3 months. We just reviewed data.
Yeah.
Air quality, housing, food desert. So we identified issues, and then we were going to formulate a plan of going out and asking questions. So it's right in line with what we're looking at.
Citywide.
So I'm getting here that we definitely want to hire somebody, so we can start doing some research on some different possibilities there. Is that
Yep.
in line with what everyone's thinking here? I don't, we can decide tonight
Well,
who that person is or where they report, or we can gather some information on it first, so.
I mean,
Their information.
yeah, I mean, we could consult some of the people that we probably could hire first in terms of, is this a route perhaps? I mean, Kelly Thompson has been giving Dylan and you information. Linda Watson has offered, to consult me if I had any questions because she does surveys and stuff. I mean, we could give you some resources to develop if you think we should hire someone, or, I mean.
Okay. All right, well, I'm getting
Are you
that
putting
everybody
together an
wants to
application
hire
about
someone.
who to hire? Yeah.
What's that?
Are
Yeah.
do you have an idea who we're hiring?
For the staff person?
Or just are we hiring 2 staff people?
Well, that's I guess we can figure that out. We're trying to decide now if we want an
think we're-
actual staff person or a
To develop.
Further down the road,
Taking a look at an outside firm.
consultant also.
further down the
Yeah.
road.
That's a different
I think we need to look at
conversation.
a consultant first, understand that we need somebody to implement and manage this so it actually happens, and then at that point, determine if it's
Okay.
one person or 2
So
people.
through that process, we determine how many, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
But we're all in agreement, we need somebody. I just want to be
It
able
would be great
check
if
that
we
off
could
my
just do
list.
this all in-house and not hire somebody, but the reality is we can't.
well, I know Seattle, some of the other cities have already have theirs up. We could see who they use. Maybe they're free.
Yeah.
And I can tell my constituents, we're gonna only do this in-house, but then you get what you pay for,
Right.
right?
And
And no
other
offense
city-
to Randy.
Nothing else to get.
We talked a little bit about public input. So do we want to wait until we have a consultant to do the okay. And they can kind of guide us through that process?
Well, I'm not with First Ward, so I'm going to be doing ward
Well,
meetings.
wards can certainly, anyone
Yeah.
can certainly reach out. I'm talking about the full survey for the city.
We're guiding us.
I think a survey, we can wait for the consultant. I think it might be beneficial just to get an idea as to, it's an education thing, what are the needs? Because some of the needs our residents are gonna come up with aren't gonna fall under the umbrella of what we're gonna be able to do. And so I think there needs to be that communication and education both ways, that, yes, we are looking at how to work and how to help, but we can't do everything. But I think having the open conversations to just to find out what were the needs You know, what are the needs? What are people looking at? I mean, we can kind of guess housing's going to be one, you know.
Well, it's
Paying
kind
bills is
of,
gonna
but
be
it's
one.
kind of a double-edged sword there. You know, if we do the survey first and give it to the consultant, he's gonna adjust the way he does the survey. You're gonna have, and the big problem with surveys is getting biased results. So we need to be, and maybe this is where a consultant could help us formulate the questions so that we don't have a biased result. I certainly, you know, don't want to be in the position, say, well, you know, Mark, you did this, you shouldn't have asked this question because it clearly, you know, you're slanting the way the answers that are possible to give.
No, I think the survey should happen after we get the consultant. The
Oh,
consultant needs to, I was
okay.
just talking about an open forum, a town hall, an unplugged,
Right.
just to get that.
We need that anyway. I mean, just to, like we're saying, just to educate our residents of what our guidelines are, because they have no clue. So that's why they're coming and asking for anything, because they don't understand what the guidelines are, that we have to, you know, it's a very strict guidelines what we have to fall under. So that's a perfect time to give
Right.
those.
But I go back to the unplugged, and I think the ARP deal is obviously most important and upfront. But I think that there's other business in the city that still has to happen, that people are going to want to bring up forth. You know, they may not want to talk about the relief deal at all. They're sitting there saying, what are you going to do about animal control?
With
What are
regard,
you going to do about streets? What are you going to do about, whatever it is, green energy or whatever, could have nothing to do with ARP. We should get input and let them express all the issues, not just ARP.
with regard to unplugged, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Alderman.
Mark, go ahead.
With regard to unplugged, we're gonna have to be careful about who is there, who's gonna run the unplugged, so that we don't have any OMA issues. And so if it is done in, let's say, the second ward, then Alderman Parker would sit with whomever, or none of us sit there. Just have a couple staffers there so that we don't even come close to any OMA issues with getting, having an unplugged meeting.
Well, it would be
We
a
were
public,
fine just
it would
like
be a
before.
public
Yeah.
meeting.
It'd be a public meeting.
So there's no OMA violation.
Yeah.
I mean, I would see all of the elected officials being there because these are really questions that they want to
Very
hear
good.
from the elected officials.
I'm good with that.
Just like we had before with
Yeah.
all the content, and I think I've talked to a majority of people about this, is that I think we ought to start with the format of the council members sitting up, quote, up on the stage, and fielding the questions and that sort of thing. And whether all staff is there or not, maybe some key staff, unlike we've done both. We've done where staff sits up there and the council members are out in the audience, but,
We do that, though, I would hope that we exercise the idea that we've got 2 ears and one mouth, and we should use them proportionally.
yeah. But I think we still need to have
In
somebody
other words, listen
facilitate
to what our,
it, so to
what
speak,
our,
MC it.
our constituents have to say, rather than try to get our opinion out there, because, again, that's why we're doing it. We want them to talk to us, rather than us talk to them.
I think the only part we should really be talking about is just explaining the guidelines, kind of where we
I
are.
would
Or
probably
answer,
agree.
if a question comes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I think he's absolutely correct. That's a huge issue, getting this information out.
Yes.
And I think if we have one of these unplugged, it should be designated specifically to this and put out that way. So we're not intertwining normal stuff with this is a priority, these are priority unplugs.
Right.
And I think these need to be specified just for that. And if we want to have another unplugged for normal city stuff, that's one
Yeah,
thing,
but
Mike. But I
That
think
might be, but some people may come and ask those questions, you don't control it, you don't
Yeah,
want to
but I
shut them
think,
down.
but if we put it out there, though, that this is what it's for, at least we've made that attempt. I
Sure.
mean, we may get a random question,
That's fine.
but I
That's
think this is the intent
You
of
wanna
doing
shut it
this,
down.
though.
And that would get more people in, I think.
Yeah.
Right, more people would be there if you're
Could
gonna
we have-
advertise something specific.
Maybe a handout where it's written out for them, the federal guidelines too? They could
Yeah, we can
take away-
provide all that information. I
Because
mean,
it'll be
Bad
too
idea.
much information to absorb, even if we have audio-visual capabilities, but if they have a handout where they have a list, because then maybe they'll want to go home and think about it and then come back to a later one and come up with more ideas.
The Treasury guidance is very good,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that couple page, and then the fact sheets. Those are pretty, for someone that wants to delve into that, that's easy information, and then if they're interested in more, they would go online, but that's good information up front. It's easily understandable and explains what you can and can't do with the money.
So are you suggesting that we have that handout at the Unplugged, or do we put that on our website and say, prior to, here's?
about both?
All of the
How about
above.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And I'm gonna do a real quick clarification, just for viewers or whatever else. Unplugged is like a town hall meeting. I just don't
Right.
want people, once again, understanding out there, don't understand what Unplugged is that it's a town hall meeting. Everybody's welcome throughout the whole city, even, so we've had some people outside the city, which is fine, the press
It's
is
the
welcome. and
acoustic
everything else.
version.
Yeah, that's exactly. But I just want people to understand what we're talking about here is that
I would also like to suggest maybe we think about doing two. Maybe we think about doing one on a weekday in the evening, and maybe think about doing the other on like a Saturday. I mean, I know Saturdays are busy, but trying to do it so that people have two options, because if I want to go to one and I can't go to one, I'm gonna be frustrated. But if we have two of them close together, that gives people options, and I like the whole idea of them being open, because the needs in my ward are different than the needs in Alderman Parker's wards, because yours is more business in the downtown area. And I think that's important as people start talking about things, because when it comes to money, people get very, very selfish, if I can say that in a nice way.
Sure.
And so I'll use me, so what I may think is just really important that I have to have out of these ARPA funds, as I'm listening to someone from another ward talk about what's important to them, you know, I may reflect on the fact that, oh, yeah, mine's really not that important compared to that other one. So I think it humbles people to understand that we are one big city and we're a very diverse city. And what one person wants isn't necessarily what another person needs.
Yep. That's a good
between
observation.
wants and need.
Yes.
And I think, you know, this person that Randy's looking to might have some suggestions in terms of, is a town hall the best way to do that in terms of what we're talking about? There might be other options. I don't know yet. I think we should wait and see, but it's about engaging and getting people's
I would probably
info,
say
correct?
no. I say we get on that sooner than later, because we want to get the information of the guidelines out to the public, because as much as they can find that if they look hard enough, a lot of people just don't put that effort in. A lot of people have no clue what this money can be used for, and I think hiring a consultant to decide whether we should do it, I think we still need to know what the citizens want. I don't think there's any harm in doing that prior to. It's not,
Well, not to get too heady about it, but kind of what we're talking about is the fact that we need to be communicating to the public what our plan is with respect to spending this money, right? So not only have we identified that we need to come up with a recovery plan, but we also need to communicate to the public that we are in the process of coming up with a recovery plan, right? So that, I mean, already people are seeing Davenport already did that. Davenport already did this, right? And it's like, well, Davenport has their process. I promise we're not doing, I mean, on the city's Facebook page, have we put anything about how we've now had 2 public meetings about planning on how to do this ARPA process, right? Or what we prioritize compared to our neighbors. Like, no, the answer is no, and that's fine. That's not like, shame on you, you should be doing this. But the point is, we need to be thoughtful in communicating to the public what we are trying to do, which we've identified tonight, you know, coming up with a recovery plan before we even start the process of coming up with a recovery plan.
But
It
do
helps
we
us,
want, to-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It helps us build trust with the community, because usually they're not involved in these type of discussions. Even this type of discussion is usually, it's not as in-depth as it usually is. So we're given way more information than the public usually has. So that changes the narrative, because now we have more people engaged. They have more people that have questions that they want to ask. So
I totally agree with that.
yeah, so we definitely need the more unplugs, and the more, I think we'll be able to get the town halls back going, so.
I think sooner the better on those.
And
agree.
we can start them now, and then when we get the information, to me, then we would go out again.
Yeah.
So this is sort of, here are the guidelines, gather some initial information, and then we go out later when we have this plan put together, and we talk about deploying the plan and how to you know, request funds and that kind of thing. So it's a different, but I think
agree.
they need to be both places.
I think people are very anxious to start talking about it.
They want to feel like they're part of the process. They want to be more knowledgeable about what's going on. I think it's best that we start this sooner than later.
There is no harm in over-communicating.
Really?
Well, I'll send out some tentative locations.
Talk about the high school, just to throw that out there, just
Yeah, the high school,
little theater.
Right now.
Yankton Elementary School would be a great one.
yeah, Dankman is good.
Seventh
I
Ward.
would want to do them on each,
Willing to host you one in the Seventh Ward.
what's that?
Seventh Ward would be more than willing to host one.
Okay.
We haven't had one, I don't think.
I have
If
a
anyone
really,
has
I have a really big
ideas,
lot that we could use.
Let me know. Yeah, you do.
What?
Big lot we could use. Bring your
All right.
lawn chair.
I know I mentioned the high school just for, a central location, and it's open, they have the space with the auditorium, it's nice and big, so
gym.
it's a central location that everyone can get to. I think that should be like our initial one.
Yeah, that's a
And then we can go out from there.
I agree.
Will we have the capability, if we do it at another location, like say the high school, to record it in some way and just put it out there?
Yeah,
I mean, all the churches are recording and live streaming their services
I don't know if
now.
the school's got the YouTube, or to be able to record it, put it on YouTube.
I don't know what
or
they
not.
have in the.
I mean, they record them off a
Live,
cell
I don't think do it
phone.
Well,
live.
and we can do that on the cell phone. We can do Facebook Live.
About
You just
Heritage.
put a
I know-
mount on a cell phone and.
What about Heritage Church? They have video capability.
Once again, Randy's correct, you do FaceTime Live.
Yeah.
Put someone's cell phone up there, do FaceTime Live, and that puts it out there live, obviously, and
Actually, Heritage Church-
potentially you can get
Alderman
questions.
Hurt,
You
that's
really
a-
facilitate it, you can get questions through there, too.
That's a great idea. Heritage Church has plenty of parking. They have capabilities to stream it. I'm sure they'd be willing to host us.
Well, we're gonna have several of them, man.
Think about location again, that's,
There's the Baptist Church on, I believe that's in your ward.
only reason I
yeah.
say Rocky is because buses go there.
Absolutely.
People they can get there. I mean, we have a lot of our residents who have kids who get to school, so they're able to get there. I love the other ideas, but we're just looking at, we want to include everyone and make sure they have ability to get
I
there.
think we're gonna have to move it around. I think there's gonna help.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
it's not-
definitely,
it's
definitely.
not one.
Yeah, you got the
so,
King
yeah.
Center, you got all kinds of places.
But I think for the initial one, that's a great
Yeah, we've
location.
never
Great.
had it at the high
I like the
school.
idea of this Facebook Live, you can ask questions through it, too.
Cool idea first.
Yeah,
Well, but not everybody has access to Facebook, though.
I agree, but
Yeah,
you're
so-
recording it, you are recording, and you could take that recording and put it out on YouTube.
Right, right.
Not everybody's got access to YouTube, but yes.
Well,
And that's what you
YouTube
see.
YouTube is easier, I think,
What's that?
to get the access.
Right.
Maybe,
I know.
maybe we
I don't
can reach
have-
out
That's how-
to
that's what-
Dr. Lawrence
Well,
and see if he
anyhow.
has
I don't subscribe to
the
YouTube.
Abilities.
Kathy works for
People
the
are
school
doing
that.
district. You
this off
could,
of cell phones.
Yeah.
we could ask Kathy Lalonde.
So,
Is that Kathy?
I think those details could be worked out,
Yep.
dealt with. I don't think we need to do any more than that.
Could ask you.
Well, if you have ideas for some other location, send them to me. Otherwise, I'll send out some that we've used before. Initially, maybe we set up 3. One centrally located in the high school, one in the east end, one in the west end.
I think any place on a bus line.
I was just, yeah, I'm fine with the high school. I was just trying to make
Sure.
Alderwoman Gilbert's point, if they don't have the capability to technology.
They may, we just don't know.
And if they do, if it's gonna be too much work.
Don't worry, we'll hire D Films to just videography the whole thing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
And you can do that also, but that's,
They do it.
But I
they
mean,
sure do it.
Make
Like-
it easy.
They
yeah,
did the,
Good job.
the
churches weren't expert in this, and they
every
figured
single
out how to
Sunday.
put a cell phone camera on there to record services.
Heritage
United Way.
has great video.
That's exactly.
there.
D-Films did United Way. All right.
That's the easy solution.
okay, so I think we're good. We'll come up with some locations. We'll start that. The next one is in-person meetings. I think we've discussed that. I don't think we need to go any further on that. And I don't know if we need to discuss any of these others right now because we have decided to, have someone up front help guide us. But I'm certainly willing to discuss any of those if you want. I know you've all had opinions on them and you've all given me things that you would like to see funded, but I think it's a little premature to discuss those things.
Agreed.
I mean, so what I have is, so far, we understand the need to collect data. We need for upfront planning. We are gonna look at options for hiring someone or a consultant or a service agreement, because we all agree that there does need to be someone dedicated to this. The survey, so collecting the data will be multiple parts. This actual survey will be conducted after the consultant works with us, but we'll initially start with the unplugged. I'll look at 3 possible. I think that's a good number, gives people options. One would be during the day, one could be a weekend, and one could be a weeknight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we could do 3 like that, so it would
But then
offer.
what time frame? Are we looking at a couple weeks to do all
I would get
3?
them all within 2 weeks.
Okay, so maybe we could pick 3 locations and 3 locations for those 3 times, okay?
When does when do the next water bills come out?
So the water bills are, it takes 13 weeks to send out the water bills.
I just got mine yesterday.
Because
Oh, they just came out?
they're in
Okay.
13, so if you just got one, it's 3 months before you get another one.
Okay. I just wasn't sure.
They're
I
not
just
a
paid
good-
mine today, I just got it.
They're not a good way to get out timely information.
Well, I was just thinking if they were gonna be coming out like in the next month and a half.
They are
we could
for
s-
some people.
We could stick a
some
survey,
people,
we
no.
could stick a survey in
Are they
there.
staggered? I didn't know. I just
They
got
are
mine.
staggered,
I didn't
every
know.
13 weeks.
We had
What's
a
the cost of
communication
mailing?
plan on the books
What's
that
the
we
cost of
could,
mailing to everyone?
7,000 rings a bell, maybe the library knows. You ever mailed anything to everybody? Isn't it several thousand, like 7,000? I think a postcard is 5,000 maybe, but a survey would be 7. I can find out. But then, you know, they have to send it back in. Do you want a self-addressed stamped envelope, or is it just gonna tell them to go online or show up somewhere? But I'll get that quote also.
But what about if you sent those out and, well, that'd take too long to get those out before it unplugged, so.
But I think
something
you have
like
to be
that.
careful that you don't have people duplicate their survey too.
Right, yeah, there's no control over it if you do it. That's why a consultant will.
We
help
need-
We're
us.
talking about survey. I wasn't talking about the survey. I was just talking about getting the word out for like the unplugs and stuff like that.
Right.
We can send a card out.
Yeah, I mean, I can deploy captains. I mean, David Riquette's been pulling people together, and I got, you know, precinct committee people that can start walking neighborhoods if we have dates and stuff. I mean, I can help get the information out.
Card out with all 3 dates and
Oh, yeah,
locations
have every
on it,
date,
and
so,
here you
yep.
go, and
Once
what
we
it's
narrow
about.
that down.
it's what Jason Wild did when he used to do them. You know, he put up posters all around town and
Yeah, he did posters.
flyers.
Boom.
We don't have Jason Wild anymore now, so I guess Randy's gonna go around
Well,
town and
any-
tack
We
up.
can make a flyer and.
Andy, got a question. So we don't have any of the guidelines on our city site as of right now, do we? for the-
Nope, but that's on my list to
So
put
what
them
I'm
on
thinking
there.
is, if we're gonna send out a card, can we put the guidelines in, and then you can also put on that same card, hey, go to our website to look up the guidelines, and then they'll have that prior to the.
Newspaper's another.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, link should be
I'm
on-
just saying, if you put a link on, but if you put that on the same card that you're
Yeah.
saying, here's our 3 dates, then it gives them another opportunity to look it up.
I know a reporter that might do a
the
story
link
and
on
get
the
it out there.
homepage, though.
Yes, I,
So they
If
don't-
we only had a connection with the news media.
I don't know, who works for the newspaper, do we know?
all in attendance, raise your hand.
We also have that, on the record that we do every week, and we'll put it out on the record, so it's on Channel 4 every Wednesday.
Okay.
We can do that. Variety of ways to get out. And once we do, we'll do a press release. Once we do a press release, then the press will probably want to interview somebody on that.
Thanks for volunteering.
They usually want to talk to the mayor. They rarely want to talk to me. And the mayor's happy to talk to them. But it can be individual aldermen too. Whoever wants to talk to them. You know, we'd have a common message.
Right.
So, yep, and then we're gonna schedule the unplugged, and then we're gonna put the treasury guidance on the website.
Like on the front page.
Well,
So
the,
it's real easy.
The link, the link, yeah.
the problem is, everything wants to be on the front page, and
I
eventually.
think right now that has to be.
This is
I
important.
know it is, but it's hard to put, you can go to some websites and they have everything on the front page,
Right.
and the print is this big, and you scroll all the way down.
Well,
But we can
no,
certainly
the
put it
link-
on,
Or just put the link on the
The
front
link
page,
to,
front and center.
yeah,
yeah, but it has to say
right,
treasury guidance.
yeah.
People aren't gonna know what treasury guidance
Yeah, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
We'll put it
What
on
we
there.
can and
I
can't
go to a
spend the
website and
money
it's
on.
just
Shouldn't it be
Times
the-
New
shouldn't it be-
Roman with a link. It's like, I'm not going to this website anymore, guys. Sorry. Like, we need generational perspectives on what's going on.
But the guidance is to
We got
use
what
it
we
for
have.
affordable housing. I mean, so affordable housing means a lot of different things, right? Are there different pillars within the American Rescue Plan? What are, you know, messaging in terms of like, we don't want to put, this is what you can and you can't. The legislation was written so we could do the unknown. We could do the innovative, creative things. That's why the legislation was written that way.
Yeah.
And you had said, okay, so there's the fact sheet and there's the FAQs out. That might even be like difficult for some people to go through, because I think the fact sheet was 8 pages long. So we might need even a briefer summary, but here's a link to get, if you want the full
Yeah, let me
thing or
check. I think
something.
one of them, they have one pretty short one.
You know, the final guidelines aren't even out yet.
Right, yeah. But
The-
what we got in May wasn't a whole lot different from what we saw.
Yeah, I think if
They got
anything.
They got
they'll-
another one coming out, what, 30 days or?
Yeah, in the middle of next month. Or the-
Guaran- so probably the reporting will change too, so, you know.
And I think they'll, if anything, they'll get more lenient.
Yeah,
I
They're
would
not
guess.
gonna be stricter than they are now.
I agree.
I think they'll clear up the language on what you know, people will have had specific questions on what you can use the money for, and I think they'll clear some of that up with more detail. That would be my guess.
because we'll uncover different things in our community we didn't realize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long document, and, you know, it came out, and then people have a chance to read it, and then,
Yeah.
So just to make sure, you're gonna get on a price and these
I'm gonna
and
get
how
a price
soon
for
we can get
those
these out?
and an actual envelope, but those would be easier.
Yes,
And we can start drafting something to put on there, and,
yeah, without waiting till 3 meetings from now to approve it.
oh, no, we can have something this week, I
Just
think.
gotta work on getting, to make sure we got a common date that everybody can be there.
Date and location.
That's the issue, is that this group is, we gotta work on dates. That sometimes is tricky.
Oh, I know.
We have a holiday coming up at the end of the
I'm
month.
on vacation too. I don't, do we
So-
all have to be here at the,
What?
I mean, if I'm collecting, I mean, if we're doing these throughout the summer, do we have to all be there? Is that what we're?
That's up to you. That's really up to you.
Goal is to try to get
I would like to
everybody
get as
there.
many
You want
there,
everyone there?
as many there as possible, just because, you know, you want to show you're all together. But I understand if things come up and if someone can't make one.
Because I know I'll be on vacation.
I mean, no one's going to make a point of you not being there, I don't think, because there's a number of these. And again, you can do your own ward meetings too. That's completely separate from this. So if you want to start having ward meetings to talk about anything, and then this can be one of them.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing. Any other things you want staff to do right now? The goal would be to have all the information back to you by the end of next week.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else then. I think we already talked about, the other item on the agenda was the strategic planning, and that's gonna be talked about when we look at this, decide if we wanna do that. We good? All good?
All good? Not 9 o'clock yet. We can't be done.
Yeah, we can go, no, but number 9 is
Come on,
other
Moses wanted to stay till
business.
9.
But number 9 is other business.
I'll turn it back to you then.
Unless you all want to.
Then we are, I assume, and just for the general public, item number 8 was strategic planning discussion, which we've already talked about a little bit, and we'll be working in conjunction with the ARPA. So the other, item number 9 is other business. Is there anybody else, anything else for the good of the cause?
We extend this meeting longer because Alderman Robinson wanted it to go until
Well, that's what
9
I
o'clock.
thought, too.
You all are welcome to join me at 6 in the morning when I'm at work. So
I'm usually up at that time for a different reason, but yes, that's fine.
not a problem.
I'll be right there with you.
And again, Alderwoman Gilbert sent out this information for you to look at your leisure and.
Just for,
comment
just FYI.
if you like. Or anything, or just give it to everybody? I've already given it to everybody.
What?
Did you want to talk about it or just hand it out to us?
Well, I know Dylan had sent out his thing on a recovery plan, and I had, done a lot of research on how other communities all across the country are figuring out the process and how to move forward. So, and then from hearing from nonprofits, been talking to businesses, I have a third ward advisory council, so I just started putting some thoughts down on paper for an alternative process. Or that may end up, these pieces may be part of ultimately what is our process.
Yep.
So,
Okay? Okay, but up.
Has any questions, they can email me.
So what is, oh, the outside.
What, Dave?
Well, no, it's okay.
Can't hear you.
Yep, mumbling over here. First of all,
He'll talk to you later.
I just don't understand what lost revenue is. What does that mean?
That's what's in the guidelines. So
That- so-
cities can, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, so that's our lost revenue.
From like that budget deficit we
Yeah,
had last
yeah, so the way that's calculated is you look at where you are in 2019, and then you use a formula to figure out where you should have been at 2020. You can use one of two formulas. Either you can go back and look 3 years of your revenue and look at that percentage growth, or you can use 4.1%. For us, 4.1% is better. So we are using that and came up with, in the initial round, first blush of $5 million. Now, that can be revisited every year. So we visit end of this year, end of '22, and end of '23.
Okay.
And that money, it doesn't just go into the general fund and disappear, it goes into a line item, and it would be the same approval process as any of these funds. It wouldn't be something staff would just take and,
And it could be rolled over like a 3-year commitment.
it could be,
type
yep.
thing, like
Yep, it would stay in that fund until it's expended. And it has to be expended.
Right.
But it has to
3
be
years, it's
expended
gone,
in that,
regardless
in
of
that
3
fund, in that particular line item.
Well, it would, from that line item, you would track where it went, yeah. I think, so if you were gonna move some of that over for infrastructure, then it would ultimately move into that infrastructure pot of money, and there would be a trail of how it got there. And then that would come to council for approval first, wouldn't just be moved, it would, hey, we wanna use a portion on this. And that would come through in the recommendations, when we start bringing these recommendations from staff and citizens. It may be more appropriate to fund some nonprofits out of that than out of the actual ARPA funds, because there are less restrictions on it. And that
And
would be
hope-
something we'd figure out as we go.
Hopefully, that funding or any expenditures would come before council for approval before the money was spent, and then say, oh, by the way,
It would,
we
no, it
spent this
would.
money for this.
It would have to, because it would be, unless council authorized a certain amount of money, say for grants to businesses up to $8,000, then you would just allocate that initial amount of money, and the economic development team would work on doling it out. Each individual item wouldn't come out, but there'd be a track of where all those went. But any expenditure over 10,000 has to come to council.
Would you think that
You're
the
welcome.
Botanical Center is a nonprofit, or are they a cultural tourism destination?
They can go either.
Both.
So that's why I want to be careful where we don't, just lump all nonprofits into.
Yeah, but I would consider them more of a cultural asset and under tourism, because they bring people to Rock Island, and if we are able to enhance that facility in some way, it's a long-term enhancement. It's something that people will enjoy for decades.
With regard, though, to spending that money or putting that money in lost revenue, we would still, if the money was not spent in that line item, then we would have to pay that back.
Yeah, but we're not gonna not spend it. I'm just telling you right now, staff requests alone are gonna be more than
Okay.
$26 million. So there's no way we're not spending the money.
Right, and that's the concern.
But we still have that same guideline that if it, it's got to meet.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you still have to spend it. You can't keep it. It can't go right into your reserves. You could fund something, and then that money you are gonna fund that could go into your reserves. But this money, you have to show that you've expended it.
And in 3
It's
years,
not
it's
just free
gone.
money.
In 3 years, it's gone. Right? In 3 years, it's gone.
Well, you have to allocate it by the end of the third year.
Has to be allocated.
There'll be no if we get to year 3 and we have $20 million left, we can spend it.
Yeah.
There's no,
No, but like year 5, we won't have a balance in our account. It has to be gone, right?
yeah, it'll be gone.
Well, it has to be.
And it will be. I mean, we have, well, all of you know, we have enough to spend it on somewhere.
And you do get to make, maybe mention this, lost revenue for the city, not only this last year, but each year for the next 3 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So my guess is up to half of it could go in that fund. You're still gonna spend it the same way. The documentation is just different. It's more unrestricted.
Half of it could end up in lost
Well, at
revenue.
some point, I would love to hear from staff on some creative ideas, not same old, oh yeah, let's just do the CIP plan, but something really creative that we never have the money to fund. Like I keep hearing from a lot of them, technology, we need,
Yeah.
So we have,
desperate for technology upgrades.
and they're already looking at that information, so.
Smile on his face, I can see it from here.
Bugging him about it. and Mr. Thorson's been bugging me about software, so there's plenty of need for that, and that'll definitely be in there. And any changes to our software not only increase how we work, but it increases how the public interacts with us.
The website.
Oh, yeah. I think we're all in agreement on that, right?
Yeah,
New website?
I mean, so it's
Or redone,
all,
but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I just know and Jenny, Alderman Swanson does too, 1 + 2 + 3 = 26 very quickly. And so in 3 years, it's gone, so that's the task that I think it's great that we're meeting, that we should probably spend it wisely, spend it smartly, and deploy it. In 3 years, it's gone.
yeah, and that way, if we have a goal we're shooting for and we have measurables along the
Measures.
way, we can,
Quickly adapt and change if it's not working.
you
in
can,
one area.
exactly.
Yep.
Well, and that's what, in my proposed process, I started laying out criteria for evaluating any requests for funding, nonprofits, businesses, staff requests, and also about, you had brought this up, Alderman Keenan, leveraging money. Are there other pots of money in the community that can be leveraged to achieve the same results?
Maximize.
You know, bringing in philanthropy, bringing in the school system, because they got money for broadband too, you know, and seeing what they're doing. et
And the
cetera.
state is gonna bring down additional money for broadband.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Of
yeah,
course, going down that rabbit hole, I know I talked to you, Judith, about infrastructure, or broadband, and everything else, is that, you know, it seems, I don't know the right word, but the idea is to put cable or fiber optics down every street and say, okay, now everybody's got access. But they don't.
right.
Because now, number one, you got to get it into their house. Number two, what if they can't afford the monthly payments to get the service? So in theory, just running the actual physical cable doesn't really give people access.
You give a neighborhood hotspot.
And so, that's exactly
30
right.
million they have coming their way.
That's exactly, is there another way creative, like we talked about, is you make hotspots throughout the whole city, or in different neighborhoods, or whatever it is, or free internet, or, you know.
And you can work with the provider on a reduced rate for the, you know, maybe it's $15 a month.
Well,
Is another avenue.
Just said
But I
today,
just, you know, once again, that's,
$10 a
we're thinking a little deeper,
paper's
is that
giving
that's,
$50 credit.
that's truly giving people access
She's gone.
versus just saying, well, it's right there. you know?
Well, and also making sure they have the hardware to use it. I mean, it's great if you've got access right up to your door,
Right.
but if you don't have a laptop or a tablet, it ain't gonna do any good.
And that's what the school system might be able to help with. And
But they didn't, yeah. 'cause-
the other, real quick, I'm just totally off field, real quick on the basis, just because I had this conversation, but Jumer's Casino goes in front of the gaming board tomorrow or the next day to get approval of that. And if they get approval, which they don't see any reason why not at this point, Bally's and Jumer's would, or Delaware North, would seal the deal on June 14th. It would officially be, on that date, would officially be Bally's. They're still going to go into the Jumer's name for a little while, probably changing that in the near future. But come June 14th, it will be under new ownership and a fast-growing company that my conversation with them was quite exciting, and they're anxious to get into the community. So
Event center.
you'll get it.
One of the events.
I can't comment on that. It's not my money in that project, but they did talk about that.
Have we
So-
heard anything from the county of how they're doing with their funds?
Yep, 100% of the county, I think. They are so far behind, once again, lost revenue, and building needs, and everything else, that they haven't made that final decision. So I make that a little facetiously.
Right.
Richard, I apologize. But in talking to them, their need is quite heavy that way. They may do something with broadband out in the rural areas that unincorporated, so they may work on that. They're still working on their process, but they're going to be a little more limited on input It's gonna be more input from, the board members than anything else.
Okay.
But, that's the indication they get. But I gotta say that at this point, we are been in communications, and I say we, but I know, because the city manager and the mayors meet on a regular basis, so that's where we are. I don't mean to, are meeting on a regular basis with them, and we have a specific, a meeting set up to talk about ARP.
Okay.
Just to, once again, get a hunch and feel of what are people doing, what process are they taking, you know, those type of things. Obviously, we've heard Davenport's been pretty public about those. Moline's been out there doing some listen meetings, which is fine. So that's some of the things they're doing, but, so we're getting together with all of the, we call it the, if you want to call it the Big Seven. Scott County, Rock Island County, Moline, Rock Island, East Moline, Davenport, and Bettendorf. Bettendorf is pretty committed to, half of it's going to sewer and water, and half's going to lost revenue, done. They get $5 million. And so we're doing 2.5 sewer, and 2.5 million city funds, city loss, done, is what they're pretty good indication.
Is it new development, water and sewer?
I don't know answer that.
So what's this June 23rd meeting night? Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about, is that,
Who's that for?
it is for the city managers and mayors. Once again, to keep it to where, the conversation, OMA issues, and keep the conversation a little more.
Item 10?
Call the question. Come on.
The 9 o'clock, we got an hour, don't we?
No, we're not.
You asked, buddy, you brought it up.
Alderman Robinson wants to go to.
All right, so I will call, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Move to second. We do need to do roll call.
Alderman Robinson,
Aye.
Alderman Hurt,
Yes.
Alderwoman Gilbert,
Aye.
Alderwoman Swanson,
Aye.
Alderman Parker,
Aye.
Alderman Poulos,
Aye.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
7-0, motion carries. We're